D-Day, June 6, 1944. It's one of those dates, right? We all know the basics about the huge invasion force hitting Normandy. We think about the infantry, the paratroopers, maybe those massive battleships way offshore.
Huge scale, absolutely.
Hmm.
Thousands of ships, hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Just immense.
But today we're doing a deep dive into something maybe less famous, but absolutely critical. We're focusing on the U.S. Navy destroyers.
The tin cans.
Yeah, the workhorses. We've got some really interesting source material here, a study that really digs into what these specific ships did and why it mattered so much.
So what's our mission for this deep dive? What are we trying to unpack here?
Well, it's really about showing just how vital their support was, especially to the landings themselves. And importantly, how the Army, the guys on the ground, actually evaluated that support. Spoiler alert,
No.
they thought it was crucial. And, this whole story is just a powerful case study for why you absolutely need that tight joint force cooperation, Army and Navy working together, especially in something as tough as a forced entry from the sea. Right. And the sources, they hint at some pretty incredible moments. Real courage, improvisation under fire. It sounds like it wasn't just smooth sailing according to plan.
Oh, far from it. Especially at one particular beach.
Okay, let's get into it then. Tell us about these destroyers. What kind of ships are we talking about?
So in 44, the main players were the Benson and Gleaves classes. These are around 1,600 tons, maybe 350, 370 feet long, sort of the standard fleet destroyers of the time.
Okay.
You also had some of the newer, slightly bigger ones starting to appear, like the Fletcher and Allen M. Sumner classes, a bit heavier, over 2,000 tons.
And they were called tin cans, right? Doesn't sound very reassuring.
No, it doesn't. And it's because they had pretty light armor compared to cruisers or battleships. They weren't designed to slug it out. Their defense was speed they could do over 35 knots and agility.
Fast movers.
Exactly. But what made them so useful at Normandy was, first, their guns. They typically had 4 or 5, sometimes 6 on the Sumners, of these 5-inch dual-purpose guns.
Dual purpose, meaning?
Meaning they could engage both surface targets, like shore defenses, and aircraft. High rate of fire, pretty accurate. And by 1944, they were absolutely loaded with smaller anti-aircraft guns, to 40 millimeter, 20 millimeter. They'd often even reduce their torpedo loadout to pack in more AA guns and radar.
So lots of firepower for their size and fast. What else? You mentioned getting close to shore.
Ah, yes. This is maybe the most critical feature for D-Day. Their shallow draft.
How shallow?
We're talking maybe 10 to 15 feet. It varied a bit, but fundamentally it meant they could get way closer to the beach than the big ships.
Which is exactly where the danger was for the landing troops.
Precisely. They could navigate in waters that would ground a cruiser or battleship. This ability to get in close, combined with those rapid-firing guns, turned them into effectively mobile artillery right off the beach.
Okay, so that's the hardware. How were they deployed? Part of this huge Operation Neptune Armada.
Right. Neptune was the naval side. The U.S. part was the Western Task Force, hitting Omaha and Utah beaches. And the Navy put a significant number of destroyers right up front.
How many?
The sources say 33 U.S. destroyers were directly involved at the beaches on D-Day. They were organized into squadrons and divisions. Destroyer Squadron 18, or Desron 18, was key at Omaha.
Desron 18. Which ships were those?
Mostly Gleaves-class ships. You had Satterley Thompson, Carmack McCook, Emmons, Baldwin, Harding, Doyle, and the flagship Frankfurt. 8 of them were assigned direct fire support missions right before the landing.
And at Utah Beach.
Off Utah, you had ships from Destroyer Divisions 20 and 34. Names like Corey, Hobson, Butler, Girardi, Herndon, Shubrick, Fitch, Forrest. Again, roughly 8 in direct support roles initially, with others providing screening further out.
And the plan was for them to work with troops on the ground.
That was the idea. Each destroyer, or group of destroyers, was assigned to support specific Army units hitting the beach. And the critical link was supposed to be these SFCPs, shore fire control parties.
Little teams landing with the infantry.
Exactly. Small Army-Navy teams carrying radios. Their job was to spot German targets, machine gun nests, bunkers, whatever, and radio the coordinates back to the destroyers offshore for precise fire.
Okay, so that's the plan. Pre-landing bombardment, then targeted fire called in by these SFCPs. How did the pre-landing part go?
Well, it started before H hour, also 6:30 a.m. But there's a catch. The bombardment window is really short.
How short?
Only about 40, maybe 50 minutes. The high command, you see, was worried about giving away the exact landing spots with a long, drawn-out barrage.
Ah, surprise was tea.
Right. So the battleships and cruisers pounded targets further inland, while the destroyers used their 5-inch guns on the stuff right near the beach, obstacles, strong points on the bluffs, defenses covering the exits.
Did it work?
It was mixed. The sources are pretty clear on this. At Utah Beach, it seemed more effective. The terrain was flatter. The German defenses weren't quite as formidable. And, well, there was also some luck involved with landing craft drifting into less defended areas.
The Omaha.
Omaha was a different story. Much tougher terrain, those high bluffs. And the smoke, the haze from the bombardment itself, actually obscured targets. A lot of the German bunkers and gun positions, particularly the ones dug into the cliffs, were barely touched.
Oh boy, so the troops landing there were going into the teeth of it.
Exactly. And this is where the plan just completely fell apart, almost the moment the first wave hit Omaha.
What happened? The spotter teams?
The SFCPs, yeah. They landed right into that hellish fire. Casualties were immediate and heavy. Radios got smashed, soaked in the surf, just stopped working. The vital communication link was gone.
No way to call in fire.
Pretty much. And worse, the Navy ships had actually stopped their pre-planned bombardment around 06.25, just before H-hour, specifically to avoid hitting their own guys in the first wave.
Oh no.
Yeah. The plan was they'd start firing again on call from the SFCPs, but the calls weren't coming. So for a critical period, maybe from 06.3 to almost 08.00, the destroyers offshore were essentially blind, their guns silent.
While the situation on the beach was...
Dire. Absolutely dire. Troops pinned down on the tidal flats, taking horrific losses from machine guns, mortars, artillery from those untouched German positions, tanks swamped, heavy weapons lost. By about 07.30800, the sources say the whole Omaha landing was genuinely on the verge of catastrophic failure.
Oh, wow. Okay. So the plan is in ruins, comms are down, the army is getting slaughtered. What could the Navy even do? They're sitting offshore watching this unfold.
This is the moment. The turning point, really. It wasn't in the plan, it was pure initiative. Around 08.3, maybe closer to 09.00, Captain Clarence R. Sanders, who was the commander of Desron 18, on the Frankfurt Shire, he saw what was happening through his binoculars.
He could see the disaster unfolding.
Clearly. And without reliable comms from the beach, he made an incredibly bold decision. He essentially told his destroyers, forget the planned firing lines, forget the procedures. His order was simple. Get in closer, get in closer.
Just like that, go right towards the beach.
Go as close as they possibly could, point-blank range, basically, steam right into the teeth of it.
The risks must have been astronomical. Shallow water mines.
Huge risks. They were deliberately going into water maybe only 18, 20, 24 feet deep. Remember, their draft is 10, 15 feet. They were risking running aground, hitting mines laid in the surf, scraping their bottoms. The McCook, the sources say, operated at the 3-fathom line, that's 18 feet. Frankfurt got within 800 yards of the beach.
800 yards, that's practically on top of them.
And remember, these are tin cans, lightly armored. Now they're well within range of German anti-tank guns, machine guns, everything firing down from the bluffs. They were drawing fire directly onto themselves.
The courage of those captains and crews, it's hard to fathom.
Truly astounding. And they didn't just get close, they opened up with everything they had. 8 destroyers. Emmons, Carmack, McCook, Doyle, Baldwin, Harding, Frankfurt, Thompson just started pounding the German positions.
What were they aiming at?
Anything they could see. Muzzle flashes on the bluffs. Known strong points, those concrete bunkers called WNs or wider stands nester. Fortified houses. Targets along the seawall where the troops were pinned down. They used their 5-inch guns, firing almost flat trajectories. Some reports say they even used their 40mm anti-aircraft guns against openings in the cliffs.
Just pouring fire onto the enemy.
An incredible volume of fire. The Carmack alone fired something like over 1,100 5-inch rounds in about an hour. Their gun barrels were literally glowing red hot.
And being so close must have helped accuracy.
Massively. They weren't relying on complex calculations from shore spotters anymore. They could see their targets, see the impact, adjust fire immediately. And they were firing so low, so close, that their shells were actually clearing paths through barbed wire and minefields just ahead of the troops trying to move up the beach. It was direct, devastating support.
How long did this go on for, this close-in fight?
This intense improvised bombardment lasted for a crucial period, probably over 90 minutes. From around 08.30 or 09:000 or 10:04 a.m., right when the situation on Omaha was at its absolute most critical.
Okay, so the destroyers make this incredibly gutsy move, take huge risks, and just unleash firepower. Let's get to that crucial evaluation you mentioned earlier. What did the Army guys, the ones on the receiving end of this support, actually say about it?
This is where you really see the impact. The Army commanders were unequivocal. General Omar Bradley, the top U.S. commander there, he later wrote about that morning, fearing the worst for Omaha, and he said, quote, "Here I must give unstinting praise. The Navy saved our hides at Omaha."
Saved our hides.
Yeah.
That's pretty direct.
Absolutely, he continued. 12 destroyers moved in close to give us close support.
Yeah.
The main batteries became our sole artillery. He even called it improvised parachute artillery, like it just appeared out of nowhere when they desperately needed it.
Wow. Any other perspectives?
Oh, yes. Colonel S.B. Mason, who was Chief of Staff for the 1st Infantry Division, the guy's actually on Omaha. He looked at the German defenses afterwards. He concluded they should have been impregnable. PT. Supporting naval fire got us in. Without that gunfire, we positively could not have crossed the beaches. He saw it as the deciding factor.
The difference between success and failure.
According to him, yes. And his boss, Major General Clarence Hubner, the 1st Division commander, agreed. He called the situation nearly hopeless until late morning. He also used that phrase parachute artillery for the naval guns and said he hoped to be teamed with the Navy amphibious forces in the future. He recognized that partnership was vital.
There one more?
Major General Leonard Giroux, the V Corps commander overseeing both Omaha and Utah, sent a simple message later that day. Thank God for the U.S. Navy.
So these aren't just polite thank you notes. This is the Army leadership, from the guys offshore like Bradley to the commanders on the ground like Hubner, saying point blank that the destroyer's actions, that close-in fire support, was the critical element that prevented disaster at Omaha.
Exactly. It wasn't just helpful. The sources, particularly from the Army perspective, paint it as absolutely essential. They turned the tide.
And while Omaha was the crisis point, they were busy elsewhere too. Utah, Pointe du Hoc.
Definitely. Utah Beach, as we said, went smoother. Much lower casualties for the 4th Division landing there, maybe around 200 on D-Day. But the destroyers assigned their ships like Fitch, Herndon, Shubrick, Forrest, Gherardi were still firing constantly. They suppressed German positions beyond the beach dunes, engaged artillery batteries that were firing onto the landing areas, and helped the troops push inland relatively quickly.
Still dangerous work, though.
Absolutely. And Utah had its own tragedy right at the start. The destroyer USS Corey hit a mine just around H-hour, very close offshore. She sank quickly. 24 sailors were killed, about 60 wounded. A stark reminder of the mine threat everywhere.
And Pointe du Hoc, where the Rangers were.
Yes. The destroyers, Satterlee and Thompson, later joined by Ella Tufren, provided absolutely critical support to the 2nd Ranger Battalion clinging to those cliffs. They fired suppressive barrages during the climb and, crucially, helped beat back German counterattacks over the next couple of days. Those Rangers were isolated, and that naval gunfire was a lifeline.
It sounds like these ships were doing more than just shooting, though, especially in that initial chaotic phase.
Oh, for sure. They became multi-purpose platforms out of necessity. Rescue was a big one. Picking up survivors from the quarry, pulling guys from sinking landing craft, rescuing airmen who ditched nearby.
And casualties.
Yes, casualty evacuation. Their sick bays, though small, became initial treatment centers. They took wounded soldiers and sailors aboard, provided first aid, stabilized them before they could get to larger hospital ships. The Harding actually sent a boat ashore under fire at Pointe du Hoc to evacuate wounded Rangers and bring back prisoners. The Doyle ferried casualties back to England.
Acting as makeshift ambulances and hospitals.
And command posts, too, in a way. When shore radios failed, especially at Omaha, the destroyers became vital communication relays. Frankfurt, as the squadron flagship, was particularly important. It collected information, coordinated fire missions between the ships, and relayed situation reports back to Bradley and the other commanders offshore. Those reports were crucial for understanding what was really happening.
And protecting the fleet, too.
Always. Screening the flanks, patrolling against German E-boats, which were fast torpedo boats and U-boats. Their presence and aggressive patrolling kept those threats away from the vulnerable troop transports and landing ships on D-Day itself. No U-boat got through to the assault area.
But this dangerous work, especially getting so close, it had a cost, right? You mentioned the Corey.
It did. It's frankly remarkable none of the destroyers that charged in at Omaha were sunk on D-Day, though several took hits and damage. Emmons, McCook, Frankfurt, Harding, Baldwin. But the losses mounted in the days immediately following. We had Corey on June 6th off Utah. Then the USS Meredith, another destroyer, hit a mine off Utah on the 7th and was finished off by bombs while under tow on the 9th. The USS Glennon hit a mine on the 8th, also off Utah, and was eventually shelled and sunk on the 10th. and the destroyer escort USS Rich was lost to mines on the 8th while trying to help Glennon.
So multiple ships lost just in that first week.
Yes, and hundreds of Navy casualties among those destroyer crews. Their willingness to push into the danger zone, to take those risks, directly saved Army lives on the beach and ensured the foothold was established. That sacrifice was fundamental to the operation's success.
So bringing it all together, what's the final word on the impact of these destroyers, and how does it tie back to that idea of the joint force?
The impact, based on the sources, was unequivocally critical. Indispensable, really. You have the American generals Bradley, Hubner, Jarrow saying they saved the day at Omaha. Naval historians call it one of the finest moments for the destroyers, maybe the most effective naval gunfire support of the war. The National WWII Museum points to it as essential.
And the view from the other side, the Germans.
Even the German commanders, Rundstedt, Rommel, Blumenschredt, their reports and interviews afterwards consistently cite Allied naval gunfire as a major factor. A nasty surprise they weren't fully prepared for. It hampered their movements, broke up counterattacks, and a lot of that relentless shelling they experienced, especially near the coast, was coming from these destroyers that had gotten so incredibly close.
You can just imagine the psychological impact, too.
Absolutely. Seeing these warships suddenly appear practically in the surf, just hammering your positions, and the results speak for themselves. Omaha Beach had secured, eventually allowing 34,000 troops ashore that day, despite the near disaster. Utah landing successful, 23,000 troops ashore, objectives taken. Pointe du Hoc held, German naval threats neutralized.
And the joint force lesson.
It's crystal clear. D-Day worked because land, sea, and air power meshed. The destroyers were that linchpin connecting sea power directly to the land battle, right at the cutting edge. They took naval assets, their guns, and applied them precisely where the infantry needed them most at the moment of crisis.
And it wasn't just the plan working perfectly.
No, that's the key point. It wasn't just the plan. The plan failed at Omaha. Success came from the synergy, yes, but also from the adaptability, the initiative shown by those destroyer crews and their commander, Captain Sanders. They saw the problem, understood the Army's predicament, and acted, taking risks outside the established doctrine. Forcible entry operations demand that kind of inter-service understanding, trust, and flexibility. You need the plan, but you also need people willing and able to adapt when the plan breaks.
It's such a powerful story. The sources really paint a picture of these destroyers being absolutely vital, especially at Omaha. That courage, that improvisation, the sheer firepower they brought to bear. It genuinely sounds like they tipped the balance.
They really did. That phrase one soldier used, angels on our shoulders, seems fitting. D-Day stands as this monumental achievement of joint operations, but it's also a testament to individual bravery and the human element overcoming friction and chaos. The legacy is that beachhead, the start of the liberation of France.
And it all comes back to General Bradley's simple, powerful line, "The Navy saved our hides." So as you're listening, think about this. A massive, meticulously planned invasion hung in the balance, and the decisive action came down to the initiative of a relatively small number of ships driving into extreme danger, acting outside the original plan. What does that tell us about the critical interplay between detailed planning and the absolute necessity for human courage, adaptability, and initiative when facing complex, high-stakes challenges? Something to chew on.